Hey, good afternoon, everyone. It's Dr. John McCarthy. I'm here going to be talking about dietary approaches to reducing inflammation. A little bit about myself. I just started up with Baptist Primary Care, coming from Pennsylvania. Been doing this about 3 months now. I'm on the St. John's Bluff site. It's co-located. I've got Dr. Rust and Dr. Lindsay in the practice as well. Doing some expansion, some exciting things. And I'm a Florida native coming from Jacksonville originally. I went to Fletcher High School back in 2001. I feel old just saying that. But also was a naval officer in a prior life. Did some time out of Mayport, and it's nice to be back. But so can we go to the next slide? All right. So as the title page said, the talk today is on inflammation. And this first slide, it's just some of the buzzwords that you might hear associated with inflammation. It's kind of a broad term that we have in our minds as typically denoting a bad thing, a negative process. I mean, indeed, it can be. The definition would be it's an underlying pathophysiologic mechanism that makes most chronic diseases diseases. It's just interesting that as an acute reaction, inflammation actually it's a healing process. It's a response to infection, a response to tissue damage. It's a response whereby the body heals itself. But sometimes it goes too far, and instead of healing, it continues. It can be unchecked. It can be indolent, and then we kind of call it a meta process. And in that, it becomes a negative. And instead of helping things get better, it promotes some of these brain fog, soreness, pain, just everything that you might think about in the negative sense. But I do want to just make sure we're defining what inflammation is, that there is a positive aspect. And sometimes, indeed, we try and induce therapeutically inflammation. I'll do dry needling sometimes on sensitive spots, trying to induce blood flow, trying to induce a local inflammatory response to achieve a healing outcome. It's when the inflammation does not stop. A healing is never achieved, so the inflammation is allowed to continue to smolder. That's when we see it become a negative. And I'm going to go into more detail on why exactly that is negative. But I guess as a next step, I'd like to describe what inflammation looks like from a chronic perspective based on the different systems of the body. So can we go to the next slide, please? All right. So this is kind of a busy slide, and I apologize, but I want you to see just how rampant and widespread the different areas what inflammation looks like if it continues. This is what you're going to be used to seeing when you think about heart disease, diabetes, chronic pain patterns, asthma, irritable bowel disease, any of the degenerative disease processes, obesity, cancer, Alzheimer's. It's everywhere. To give some perspective, it's estimated that 60% of the population has a chronic disease process occurring. So it's just a little over 1 in 2 American adults. And of these, many are preventable or certainly improvable through diet. So that's the specific approach I'm trying to take. But I want you just to see how many problems can certainly be fueled by an inflammatory process that is allowed to continue to smolder without a healing outcome ever being quite achieved. So with that, and I guess with that, we can go on to the next slide. Okay, so this is the anti-inflammatory food pyramid. I've taken this slide. It's an integrative medicine approach. Integrative medicine is a discipline of medicine, like functional medicine, where we're looking to unconventional approaches to achieve health. As you look at this pyramid, and I go over this pyramid frequently with my patients because it's patient friendly. I'm a patient myself, And I like optics that are useful, that don't just give me random factoids, that actually help me to live better, help me to understand what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. So there's more to this. There's actually a handout that goes in depth for each of these. And if you go on the web, you can find this anti-inflammatory food pyramid. Certainly my patients, I give them the handout after we review it, but I want you to notice at the very base of the pyramid, it starts with vegetables and fruits, but vegetables in that seesaw comprise a disproportionately large chunk of the base of that pyramid. When you see in parentheses the small font, you'll see 4 to 5 servings a day. What I like about going into depth is the handout will actually describe what a serving is. That's something as just a layperson, I don't expect patients to understand what a serving is. A serving of vegetables is going to be 2 cups of salad greens or a half cup of reduced. So this can be cooked. Any process that takes it from raw, so you could juice it, but anything that reduces, it's a half cup. So 2 cups of spinach greens, of leafy greens, equals a serving. 10 cups, if you can have in your mind what a measuring cup is, equals your daily recommendation for vegetables. And you'll see on the other side, you've got fruits, and I particularly like seeing the dark berries, and you work your way up. What I want you to understand with foods, before we get into some more specifics about what specific foods would be a good idea, there are actual markers that we can follow. So when I give you some of this information, it's because we can actually measure it. This is evidence-based. I'm a believer that we do things because we know they work, because they're proven to work. We have the science behind them. It's not just anecdotal. Some of the markers for inflammation: C-reactive protein, interleukin-6, tumor necrosis factor, E-selectin, even series prostaglandins, adhesion molecules, transcription factors. These are actual particles that we can measure in the serum, and we can determine after you eat a certain food substance if there's any change, increase, decrease, etc. Some of the actual mechanisms. Should give me a moment. I want to see everybody, but some of the actual mechanisms by which food can be helpful in reducing inflammation. There's actually a few. Some is directly kind of like medicine, where we actually have a process that we're trying to either enhance or interrupt. And specific foods can do it. Like nutmeg specifically inhibits tumor necrosis factor. Turmeric inhibits cyclooxygenase. Polyunsaturated fats, on the flip side, actually directly increase some of the inflammatory markers. But these are direct effects that specific substances in your diet can have in the inflammation pathway. Another is in the pro-oxidant, antioxidant effects. We talk about oxidants. Those are free radical part. It's like a hydrogen ion that can cause cellular damage. And we can actually measure some of these antioxidants, pro-oxidants, and we can see about oxidative stress on a cellular level. The specific foods that reduce are carotenoids. And you think carotenoids, you're thinking about color. And so you'll always hear us recommend a colorful plate of food. Other possible avenues that food can have in interplaying into this inflammation or the specific cascades by which inflammation affects us is specifically with the insulin and glucose, where food can directly spike someone's insulin. We look at glycemic index to determine how quickly something you eat is turned into carbohydrate, which results in a spike in the sugars, which in turn is tied to poor outcome. It's tied to cancer. It's tied to the development of diabetes, which is unchecked sugar in the blood. Other gene signaling, specifically looking at omega-3 fatty acids, where having a healthy amount of omega-3 in your diet can increase gene signaling and thereby improve cellular function. Now you're talking about metabolism, enhancing metabolism through omega-3s. And then gut flora. You have trillions of bacteria in your gut, and how well they digest your food, help to digest your food for you, can in many ways help or further this inflammation balance that we've got going on in our bodies every day. So looking at gut health and probiotics and foods that have good bacteria to ensure that our gut is colonized and thereby able to effectively break down our foods, help us to get the nutrients we need. So when we look at diet, all of these things, all of these pathways are possibly coming to bear. So with that, I would like to touch on some of the food groups themselves. In the vegetable group, I specifically like the dark and leafy greens. You're looking at spinach, collards, kale, chard, and then the not so leafy greens, the cruciferous vegetables. That's broccoli, cabbage, Brussels sprouts, kale, cauliflower, and then kind of a lot of stuff that grows in the ground, but not potatoes. That's starch. We think carbohydrates, not as useful, more of a pro-inflammatory effect, generally speaking. But those are going to be the carrots, beets, onions, peas, squashes, raw salad greens. What I want you to take away from this is the star of your dish should be vegetables. It should comprise the most of what you eat in keeping with that pyramid. To the extent you're able, I want it to be colorful, working in not just greens, but like in the picture there, orange with a carrot. You could get some red with a beet. Get creative with it, but try and incorporate color and make vegetable the star of the dish. Other thoughts looking at fruits. This is specifically where that glycemic load really comes in. The melons tend to have high glycemic indexes. Watermelon being specifically a notorious one. Some of the ones I like the most are the berries. They have a lower glycemic index, and they have some really good intrinsic anti-inflammatory effects through the flavonoids and carotenoid specific classes. Blackberries, blueberries, strawberries, raspberries. Cherries are also really known to be good at providing an antioxidant effect. Pomegranates, grapes, plums. Trying to avoid really the tropical fruits as a general rule. And again, you want 3 to 4 servings a day. 1 serving is a medium-sized piece of fruit or a half cup of chopped fruit, a quarter cup of dried fruit. Dried fruits also have some good value. Nice iron content, apricots, for example, and B12 for that matter in apricots. As we work our way up, I do like to touch on beans. Rich in a lot of the minerals, folic acid, so that's one of the B vitamins, magnesium, potassium, soluble fiber. It's really good for gut health in general. And they're low glycemic load foods. So they're not going to pop your sugars like some of the others, like some of the really sweet fruits. You can eat them well cooked. You can puree them into spreads like hummus. You can get kind of creative with that. Coming into the fall, a nice pot of chili, if you can throw in some beans, for example, that you can have some fun with beans. Try and get creative with them. And 1 to 2 servings a day. A serving of beans is a half cup cooked. As we keep going up, I do like to spend a moment on the healthy fats. 5 to 7 servings a day. That's 1 serving. It's a teaspoon of oil or 2 walnuts. So if you just have 10 walnuts a day, you're getting your quota of the healthy fats. A tablespoon of flaxseed, an ounce of avocado. Avocados are particularly good. And it's looking at omega-3s is what we're specifically interested in with the healthy fats. Omega-6s, that's where you're starting to get into more of the animal products, into a little less benefit. We see a lot of good outcomes if we have a nice ratio of omega-3 to omega-6. With at least a 2-to-1 predominance in the omega-3. So you're targeting the omega-3s when you cook. And you'll see cold water fish is a particularly good source. You're looking at wild salmon. Don't eat raw salmon unless you like that. But wild specifically is what I'm interested in, to try and avoid some of the heavy metal concentration. A lot of the a lot of the predatory fish that kind of live near people tend to have higher mercury content. It's just a product of living next to people in large part, but avoiding certainly sharks, king mackerel, swordfish are known to have high mercury contents. I would ask you to be more in keeping. For the cold water fish, the salmon is really the best one. There are a couple of others, and you can actually kind of see them. With the sardines being a big one, tilapia actually is a good one. And then omega-3 enriched eggs. That's if you'll see them on the packaging. And I would recommend, if you're going to have eggs, get them so they're omega-3 enriched. That means that the chickens were given either algae or feed that was specifically enriched with omega-3 containing substances. So moving up the ladder, I'm just kind of working along with my handout. I like to touch on other sources of protein, mainly just to show you how little protein you kind of need in your given day. The other sources of protein, and by the way, this is 1 to 2 servings a week, is that's 3 ounces of cooked poultry or skinless meat, 1 ounce of cheese, an 8-ounce serving of dairy, 1 egg. The point is, you don't need much meat in your diet to be hitting this anti-inflammatory marker. I want you to be thinking with this, if you can work yogurt in, that's good for the gut. That we talked about that, the biome of the gut and having healthy bacteria predominate there. I like grass-fed and lean meats, specifically trying to avoid corn-fed, captive-raised meat sources. Again, wherever able, you want free range, cage free, however you want to call it, and organic. Organic just means less impurities. If you can get organic into your diet where possible, that's useful. There is a environmental working group, EWG. They call them the Dirty Dozen. You can look those up online. Specifically looking to try and avoid non-organic sources of those foods. And they differ year to year. There's also it's a healthy 15, where you don't need to be so inclined to go after the those 15 as far as organic or non-organic. So Dirty Dozen, healthy 15. Be aware of those. Specifically, try and get organic when possible in the Dirty Dozen. And I do see a question, just to brief intro, 3 to 4 servings of fruit a day for someone with diabetes. That's going to be really a question of how well controlled and what fruit specifically are you talking about. Oranges would typically, again, looking at the glycemic index, the berries are specifically good for diabetes because they're not going to spike the sugar. So that's why I really like the berries, because no matter what your circumstance, the berries are a good one. If your diabetes is under tight control, good control, then you can talk with your doctor. I would certainly urge that about, where maybe you could deviate, have fun. Food is fun. Don't feel like you have to be so regimented that you can't enjoy, like, say, the holidays coming up. Certainly try and look to include where you can into your day-to-day the healthy sources. There's these anti-inflammatory type foods, but at the end of the day, this is something to live by as much as possible, to try and incorporate this as the rule. And then when you have fun, that's the exception. But this is only useful if you can build this into your lifestyle, if you can make this something that you live with. If this is something you force on yourself, like most diets are, that's not, in my opinion, the healthiest way to be. You want this to be something you adopt gradually, meaning you don't radically change your diet overnight. You look to improve. So where you can, say, supplement the organic strawberries for the non-organic, where you can cut out some of that red meat in exchange for a serving of fish. That's what I'm talking. Be gradual in your approach. I find that gradual tends to have the better staying capacity, that it's something that you can fully integrate into your lifestyle and benefit from. Moving up, I do like to touch on red wine. This is, I do so with some trepidation because this is a very tight line to walk. It's no longer a formal recommendation by most societies. I don't believe the American College of Cardiology still recommends wine for cholesterol improvement, for specifically good cholesterol augmentation, because it's so such a you have to so tightly regiment your consumption. You have to have a glass of red wine is recommended most nights. That's 5 to 6 nights a week. Any more than that, it has some detrimental effects. Any less than that, you're not going to really see the benefit. So, again, a tight line to walk, but a glass of dry red for those who enjoy red wine does have some benefit. It needs to be red again, and the best is dry. That's going to be Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Shiraz, Malbec, Carmenere, Pinot. You can go online and figure out what your dry red choices are. White does not have the benefit. You need the resveratrol in the grape skins, in the red grape skins specifically. Working up, I do like to also touch on healthy sweets. An ounce of dark chocolate cacao, 70% at least cacao, is also proven to have some anti-inflammatory benefit for you. And that's fun. That's the squares you can buy. Working that into that's something I enjoy. You can put a good taste in your mouth that way, and at the same time be eating healthy. So again, trying to look to fun sources of food and making this something that you can dig into. Tea. I didn't touch on that on the way up. I would touch on tea, specifically the white, green, and oolong teas. Green tea, I just actually saw a patient who had pretty remarkable sustained weight loss, and she attributed it to the green tea. It's got a particularly nice calming effect. There's a substance called L-theanine in green tea that's noted to be soothing. So in these days of viral pandemic, anxiety, stress, look to try and incorporate some of these teas. And it's 2 to 4 cups a day, so it's a pretty decent amount of consumption. But you kind of feel healthy drinking it because it's warm, it's soothing, it's calming, just almost the ritual of tea drinking. So for those that are able, I do like to touch on that. The other one, I kind of in my haste to get up to chocolate and wine, I didn't look at talking so much about the healthy herbs and spices, but that is probably my favorite part of the whole thing. And this is one I touch on frequently with patients. I myself, I'm eating a clove of garlic nightly. Actually, I put some honey on it for the last 3 months. I've been doing this because it has some intrinsic antimicrobial effects. So it's viral pandemic, antiviral substance seems to make sense to me. It's also good with the seasonal allergies. It has some antifungal effects, so it can help with allergies. It's also got cholesterol modification effects. It's got some effects on gastritis. It's my kind of go-to superfood. Because it has so many helpful properties. You can get that as a powder in a capsular form. I usually prescribe 350 milligrams twice daily to my patients. They can get that over the counter. But 600 to 900 milligrams of dried garlic would be the equivalent dosage to somewhere between a half and 2 cloves of raw garlic daily. You can also take a mandolin, cut it thin, put it in some pickling liquid, kind of a garlic chip that improves the taste. I've also seen even a recipe for, they call it garlic milk, where you take some warm milk, crush a clove of garlic, put the minced garlic into the warm milk with some honey, and try and drink a cup or so of that a day. So different approaches, make it fun. Don't be afraid to experiment. The supplements I'm very loath to go into, just because in isolation, supplements aren't necessarily going to be beneficial for you. Really, it's a whole diet approach to get the most bang for your buck. I would urge, just as a general, anyone who's interested in this food pyramid in talking diet, because this is, again, this 60% of chronic conditions can be avoided with the proper diet with an anti-inflammatory approach. And you're looking at over half of Americans have a chronic condition. That's a lot. This is a lot of good that can be achieved here. But talking with your primary care provider about a dietitian appointment, and there are, I would delve into, just because I know that it's a service Baptist offers. We have dietitians that even can talk to vegetarian and vegan approaches. I'm not giving a specific vegetarian or vegan approach to this. But if you ask, even folks that are trying to follow a specialized diet set, you can talk to someone. And dietitians, it's 4 years of schooling. It's equivalent to medical school. These people know a whole lot about this, and they can typically discuss it with you in a more layperson approach because they're so knowledgeable. I would urge you that seeing a dietitian is versus a nutritionist. Nutritionist is not nearly as rigorous a process. So if you have access to a dietitian through your PCP or some other method, it's definitely worth a discussion if this interests you, because again, everyone has, the majority of us have a chronic condition, and the majority of us therefore could benefit from an assessment of diet and trying to reduce inflammation that might be feeding into that chronic condition. So, and I just saw a comment about thoughts on sweet potatoes. And again, sweet potatoes being a starch, they're going to have, it's a plus minus, not knowing your health profile. There are, of course, carotenoids. It's orange. It's a beautiful orange color, but it does have a higher starch content, than a lot of the vegetables that I discussed earlier. So I would say that that's one of those I would look to do in moderation, where you're going to get some, one step forward, but also a step backwards. What if you have diabetes, maybe that would be one I would consider a little harder. And how you're cooking it, how you're preparing it also is certainly going to matter. But regardless, with Thanksgiving around the corner, if you like your candied yams, I say go for it, because there is a therapeutic benefit to having those tastes of home, those creature comforts. Again, dieting, trying to come up with what your day-to-day is on food intake should be fun. This should not be a chore. Trying to the extent you're able, get excited about cooking. It'll make you feel less excited about going to McDonald's if it's something you enjoy and you're quote passionate about. Another program I would like to touch on in the remaining time is wellness coaching that is offered through Baptist. I like that because you need people to hold you accountable, to remind you, just speed bumps, if you will, to make sure that whatever your exercise routine is, and thank you, appreciate you fast forwarding to this slide, just to show you the totality. You see food talked about. I like this. You've got foods to eat, foods not to eat, and then it talks about other ways that you can help yourself. And in this, you would have a health coach that would be reminding you what to eat, what not to eat, and then some of these healthy habits, moderate exercise. Cardiologists want 150 minutes of moderate intensity physical activity a day, or a week. If you can get it in a day, that would be exceptional. But it's minimum in a week, 150 minutes. And moderate intensity means a light sweat. It means difficulty talking. So you can carry on a conversation, but you're trying to get from point A to point B. You're not, this isn't, at a relaxed pace. It is cumulative, like additive. So if you do 15 minutes of walking the block after breakfast, and then add another 15 in after dinner, 15 and 15 is 30. If you do that 5 days a week, there's your minimum 150 minute output. I would urge you to try and build that into your day so that it becomes routine. Trying to save it all for the weekend, and I'll go for a 2-hour walk on the beach, and then it rains. You missed your target for the week now. Make it something that's daily reproducible, something that you can get into and that you just adopt as the way you do life. I do like meditation. I do like mindfulness measures. Trying to clear the brain. You'd be surprised at how hard it is to clear the brain if you actually were to pick up a biofeedback tool. That's something I've talked with several of my patients about, making sure your rest is restful. So often we get stressed and we can't stop the hamster wheel from going around in the head. And there's ways to try and help. slow things down and meditating, giving your body a chance to not be burdened physically, mentally, kind of that whole mind-body connection, but trying to detach is important. And consistently getting good sleep is another very important part to touch on. Making sure that you're getting in a routine there. I mean, some redundancy in the discussion is routine, routine, routine. Trying to be routine in what you eat, routine in how you exercise, routine in how you meditate, and very routine in how you sleep. I've got some young children at home, and we are very cognizant about the routine. And you can predict when the routine has been broken. And we say high highs equal low lows. High highs if you go off the routine and indulge in some special time with family or a special trip, something like that, usually followed by low lows. That's because the routine is broken. And children, the importance of routine, having a consistent bedtime, you see it in them. We're no different. We're just big kids as adults. Getting back to a routine, establishing a routine where you eat at the same time, you do the same type of activities, and then you try and come down with low lighting, soothing activities, maybe some quiet music, trying to avoid the TV or the computer or the cell phone, blue-green sources of light. That's everyone can benefit from that. And then you'll find that if you're able to be routine in your routines, that your body will appreciate it, that your health, your overall health will be improved. Just if you look on the left, you're going to see a lot of natural, a lot of, if you shop, just as a simple person, I appreciate simple analogies. Shopping the outside of a supermarket, the outside rows, typically will get you the stuff you're seeing there on the eat more. And then if you take a look at the eat less, you're going to see a lot of processed stuff. Stuff that we weren't eating, back before kind of the Industrial Revolution timeframe. I would encourage you, to the extent you're able to, try and be more deliberate about being more natural. And there's a whole lot more to it. I mean, this is all very basic, and it's amazing as I look and see that 32 minutes have elapsed. Just how, but I would urge everyone to have a discussion with the primary care provider, whether that's your family doc, your internist, your mid-level, just about what resources are out there for healthy dieting with a specific bent towards anti-inflammatory foods, and then do your own research as well. Take an interest in this, because the better habits you can get into now, the better quality and the more quantity, ultimately, you could stand to enjoy later. So with that, I look to see any other comments. Looks like we're doing good. But with the holidays approaching, I do want to say happy holidays and certainly appreciate your time. Be well.